All right, Megan Signal, here we go. New Zealand weightlifting champion and record holder in multiple weight classes. CrossFit Games team athlete, Pacific Regional individual CrossFit athlete. That's a bit of a resume. Welcome and thank you for being here and taking some time to talk about your journey.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we'll talk about your journey in CrossFit and weightlifting soon, and everything that's come along with it. But for a start, let's talk about you growing up. Talk about where you were born and raised, a bit about your culture and things like that.
Yeah, cool. So I grew up in the Waikato in Matamata. So I was born in Kehikehi, which is just out of Te Amutu, and yeah, grew up on a farm there.
Wow.
I kind of call it a pioneer farm because we weren't a dairy farm or anything like that. We just had 3 house cows and some pigs and some random animals. But it was a pretty good upbringing. And then I went to school there, studied fashion straight out of high school.
Yeah.
So I moved to Hamilton, studied there for 2 years, got a job in Auckland in fashion, moved to Auckland, and yeah, so that felt like that all happened quite fast, and yeah, it's been here since.
And you mentioned previously as a teenager you weren't much of an athlete, you weren't really into sports, you might have had other things on your mind. Talk to us a bit about your teenage years.
Yeah, the teenage years were very different to my life now. I mean, as anyone's, but I guess living out on a farm, it made it hard for us to play sport when we were in primary and intermediate because getting into town was a challenge.
Yeah.
But when it came to my teenage years, I didn't have any natural interest in sport or activity at all, and a lot of my friends I associated with were into other things like drinking and partying and
all the good stuff.
And yeah, which was all good, and I just naturally migrated more in that direction.
Yep.
For good few years until I actually started exercising and changing my lifestyle probably when I was about 21.
Yep.
22. Yeah.
So CrossFit and weightlifting, how did it come about? Which came about first, and how did you get into them?
So CrossFit came first.
Yep.
I was working in fashion for a company called Pumpkin Patch, and we had a corporate gym at the office, and that was where I first decided to join a gym. And so the trainers there, who are now business partners, introduced me to CrossFit, Zach and Callum.
Yep.
I didn't really know what CrossFit was at the time. They were just introducing me to different movements, and I found them kind of fun. So progressed from there, and they had a gym up the road, and obviously weightlifting being part of CrossFit, that's how I learnt how to clean and jerk and snatch, which happened over a longer period of time. It's quite hard to learn from scratch.
For sure.
So the CrossFit progression started there and then slowly became more competitive over the coming years.
And you obviously enjoyed the Olympic weightlifting aspect of it most. What do you think that is?
I don't really know. I think it just clicked for me a little bit sooner, and I just liked the idea of like learning how to move your body in a totally different way, and the fact that it was so frustrating and difficult to learn kind of kept you hooked.
I've heard. All right, so if we fast forward 2013, Richie Patterson's running a comp, which turned out to be your first weightlifting comp, that's right?
Yes, that's correct.
You remember much about it? Numbers? Did you enjoy it?
I remember everything about it. I remember the boys told me that it was going to be all good and that it was going to PB lifts and it was going to be amazing hype. They'd never done a weightlifting comp either, and I got there, it was dead silent. There was no hype. It was scary. And I was super shaky. So I think I ended up snatching 52.
Yeah.
Clean and jerking 70 maybe. And they were not pretty lifts or anything like that. It was all very shaky. But so I don't know if I'd say I really enjoyed it, but I just loved that I was just trying something new. So Richie was really supportive in trying to keep me doing more comps. And so that was a big part of why I stayed on.
So what else do you think inspired you in the beginning to kind of persist with weightlifting?
If I'm being completely honest, I had never really been good at anything or never felt like I was good at anything.
Yep.
I kind of just like moseyed through life, just following my nose and seeing where I ended up. And weightlifting was the first thing where I got it and I felt like I was okay at it. And that gave me motivation to pursue it.
So all this time you're still training and competing in CrossFit. 2015, 2016, you go to the CrossFit Games as a teams athlete.
Yep.
Talk to us about those games. I remember watching an interview previously of you said you're coming away injured on that first day of competing. You're not feeling content. You're feeling defeated. Talk to us about the CrossFit Games.
Don't get me wrong, an incredible experience.
Yep.
The most incredible thing about it was that the 6 of us who made it to the games and the team were all just the best of friends, and we're still close now, and it just happened to be very serendipitous that we all ended up there together. But the actual competition itself, we'd trained so hard, but we still just had no idea what we were doing really. We were just doing what we thought we should be doing going into a CrossFit Games campaign, and weren't fully prepared for the amount of volume, for the intensity, didn't really know how to pace so much. So yeah, after the first day I couldn't sleep. Both my hamstrings were strained from, I think it was worm deadlifts on the beach.
Yikes.
I couldn't sleep. My hamstrings had never been in so much pain. I actually thought that I'd potentially torn them. And we had to go through another 2 days of competition feeling like that. So yeah, it was pretty rough.
So you knew pretty early on though that you wanted to go individual with CrossFit. Why do you think that is?
I didn't necessarily know that early on. I knew that at some point I would.
Yeah.
And then after the 2016 games, we all were on the same page. We'd all wanted to move away from being in the team, and that wasn't because we weren't enjoying it. It was because the commitment that's involved when you have 6 people who need to be in the gym at the same time.
Yep.
Everybody has to make sacrifices, and we were prepared to do that for 2 years, and then the 3rd year we just, weren't so. And for me, I really wanted to see what I was capable of as an individual.
So around this time, you also won your first national championship for weightlifting. How do you think you balanced and managed to train for both at the same time, and did one suffer more because of the other?
Not at that point, I don't think, because I was still very much new to sport in general. I was just there to have a good time, and CrossFit was still my focus because that's where I had been competing at a high level.
Yeah.
And so the weightlifting competitions came as a result of the training that I was doing for CrossFit. So thankfully they just kind of aligned enough for me to be able to compete at national champs. But had I wanted to pursue weightlifting internationally at that point a little bit more, I would have had to rethink things. Yeah.
So by 2017, you're still competing in both CrossFit and weightlifting. You've done the New Zealand individual qualifiers, CrossFit Pacific Regionals. You're still competing at a high level. And then you took a break from CrossFit, is that right?
Yes, I chose to take a break from CrossFit after the 2017 regionals. I'd probably trained harder than I ever had that year to try and make it to the games, and I qualified for regionals in 4th or 5th place, and the top 5 at regionals would have made it to the games.
Yeah.
But I still had so much to learn as a competitor, and when I got to regionals I struggled badly.
Yeah.
So I didn't make it, and I decided that at that point I was wanting just to take a break to pursue weightlifting. Commonwealth Games was the following year.
Yep.
And I knew I had a shot and wanted to put more into that. But that chosen break ended up being a forced break through injury anyway.
So we'll touch on injury very shortly, but 2018 rolls around, you get a whole bunch of new experiences. You get to travel to Japan for a training camp. Talk to us about who you travelled with and what a training week sort of looked like in camp in Japan.
2018 was an incredible year. That trip to Japan was pretty life-changing for me. It was just a group of New Zealand athletes, and I was lucky enough to be asked to go along. Just a really incredible group of athletes and really good people to travel with. And the city that we stayed in, Karashiki, they are a sister city to Christchurch. So there was always already a relationship there, and they put their hand up to host New Zealand for the build up to Tokyo 2020. So that trip was all about building relationships and meeting new people, connecting with their weightlifters, connecting with their council, and we were just absolutely looked after, like I could not explain.
The dream, eh?
Yeah, the dream for sure. So trainings were fun, and yeah.
So this is the same year, you touched on it just a little bit earlier, your knee. Talk to us about your knee. You tore your ACL in training. Can you remember much about it? I don't want to bring back bad memories, but
No,
talk to us about the injury.
Yeah, it was pretty rough. It was 2 weeks out from the last Commonwealth Games qualifier.
Oh, man.
And I'd already experienced injury before. I'd already had surgery on my arm after just starting CrossFit, and that had healed. So it was pretty rough. Just, I mean, you think you know what your year's going to look like, and all of a sudden it's not. But I have to say I have really positive and really pleasant memories of how I was looked after from my team, from Weightlifting New Zealand, from my coach Simon, and all of my physios and everything. They really got that surgery happening as soon as possible and gave me every shot at still trying to make it as they could.
So you end up getting your knee reconstructed, is that right?
Yeah.
And you unfortunately end up missing out on the Commonwealth Games because of that knee reconstruction.
Yeah.
Around this time, what did it kind of teach you about yourself and how much that you love weightlifting?
Yeah, it definitely teaches you how much you love something, because you either go through injury being disheartened and kind of move away from what you're working towards, or it just gives you more motivation to get back, and it definitely gave me more motivation to get back. And I think this injury in particular taught me, that it is really just a moment in time in a really, really big journey. So everything passes, everything heals. And so, it was a big lesson.
So 2019 rolls around, you compete in Samoa in the Pacific Games. You hit an 89 snatch, 114 clean jerk for a 203 total. In that same year, you travel to the weightlifting world champs in Thailand, is that right?
Correct, yes.
Tell us about that trip.
World champs?
Yep.
World champs was unreal. It was my second one. The first one that I went to was in 2018, and it was all very last minute.
Yep.
And so I was basically over there to tick a box. So 2019 was my first pinnacle event where I had specifically trained for well over a year. And it was the most amount of points that I could collect in this Olympic process. So there was a lot weighing on it. So it was a cool experience, and being able to be in the training hall around literally the best in the world.
Wow.
And having experienced that before in 2018, I think it was less overwhelming for me, so that was good. But the competition itself was the most difficult, or the most challenging competition I've ever experienced. The weight class was huge. It was the biggest weight class, the 64s. Every single person's around the same numbers in terms of going out, and everyone's changing their numbers up and down. So you think you're going out for a lift, and then you actually, you're sitting down, and then 20 minutes passes by, and you're then going out for your lift, but you've been sitting and your legs are gone. And so that was really physically challenging, and obviously mentally challenging, having to pull yourself out of that. Yep. So huge amounts of lessons learned there.
So you come back to New Zealand and you decide, all right, I'm going to quit my full-time job and I'm going to coach CrossFit. Talk to us a bit about CrossFit coaching and what you do with regards to your business that you're a co-owner in.
Yeah, so that actually happened in 2017 that I made that decision.
Oh, man.
So a little bit before that.
Yeah.
But yeah, the decision came around, it was for the similar reasons. I wanted to pursue international competition, and Commonwealth Games were around the corner at that time. And I just felt like, in the health and fitness industry, it really supported what I wanted to do as an athlete and as a human. So I should probably spend more time in that environment. Yep. And so the decision, although scary, was an easy decision to make, and I was very lucky that I had opportunities to do that. And over 2019, 2020, it has been the best decision I ever made, because the team that I work with allow me to travel when I need to and support me.
Yep.
Sorry, what was the second part of your question?
I've forgotten now. Talking about what you do with regards to coaching and things
yes.
at the gym.
So we run a large facility that has multiple different types of classes. It's also a 24-hour gym. We do nutrition coaching out of it, online programming. And my role is basically just to, just keep relationships with members and people within the program who are overseas.
So with all of this going on in life, you've got training, you've got a business, you've got your own personal life. How do you find you avoid getting overwhelmed, and how do you keep your body in one shape, for one and in one piece? And so do you see the physio and chiropractic care and things like that? Talk to us a bit about how you manage to balance all of your commitments.
Yeah, it's hard work. It's really hard work. I can imagine. I'm definitely better at it now, but it was all a learning process because I would try to do everything in a small period of time, and I was like, I can be a business owner, I can be a coach, I can be an athlete, I can be a good family member, I can be a good friend, and I'd try and do all that together, and I literally imploded in 2019 and had to reassess a lot. So for now, it's just whatever's my priority at the time, that takes my attention, and so that includes making sure that my body's sound and I get to my physio, my chiro. And I put aside the time to, stretch, mobilize, meditate, look after my health and well-being. And then at any point, if that priority has to change and my family needs me, then that's where I put my energy. And it's a constant juggle of that, and accepting that, I'm not a full-time athlete, and that is what it is, and do my best.
Well, let's talk about a typical day for you then. You just kind of outline, what time you're getting up in the morning. Are you exercising in the morning still? What is a typical day for Megan involved?
Yeah, so most days are 4:45 wake-ups.
Wow.
And a 6 o'clock start. I like to get up early because I like to fully wake up before I have to coach anyone.
Yep.
So most days a 6 o'clock start. It'll either be a 6 and a 7 class or just a 6. And then generally admin in between, but I'll train around 9 o'clock before I have to coach at midday. And then in the afternoon, I try to keep a little bit more chill, just doing all my admin work. And then if I need to put in some recovery and rest time in there, I do before my evening session, which is around 4:30. Get home around 7:30 and rinse and repeat.
So you've talked a bit in previous interviews about sometimes you get on the platform or even backstage and you're shaky, you're full of nerves, you're missing some of your lifts backstage. Talk to us about how you keep calm on the platform. You've worked with a mind state coach and you've benefited from that. Would you recommend it? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, 100%. So those shaky warm-ups are thankfully not as frequent, or haven't experienced that for a while, but I guess that's a good thing about this whole Olympic qualification process, is that you have to compete so often. You learn and adapt to different things really quickly. But over that time, working with a mind state coach has definitely allowed me to be in that lift and be in that moment and not be distracted by what's going on around me, which was what would happen a lot. But the platform is actually a very, very calm place for me. It's a very calm, probably where I'm at my calmest. And it's just about execution, so it's really nice,
So you touched on Olympic qualification. We'll just talk about it for a little bit. So Tokyo 2020 would have been the plan. You hit a 117 clean and jerk for an Oceania record, 95 snatch, and then COVID-19 comes along, everything gets put on hold. How does that make you feel?
I'm okay. I'm okay, because life goes on, none of this is anything we could control. It's definitely disappointing. It makes you reassess what you want to do on your day-to-day, but I guess for me it just came down to the fact that I got to that point prior to COVID because I absolutely freaking love what I'm doing. I love lifting, and so that's one thing that definitely doesn't change regardless of whether you can travel or not.
And you still love it?
I still love it, probably more than before.
So what's it going to take for Megan to get to that next level where you want to be at on the world stage? What kind of things do you need to put in place in your life to continue to progress in the sport of weightlifting?
Stay the path, is just keep doing what I'm doing, keep trying to learn and evolve when it comes to how I can physically make my body better, how I can mentally make my, mind better, and just keep loving what I'm doing. I've got an incredible team. I have everyone I feel like I need to get me to where I want to be. And so just trusting in that, staying with it, and not too much else has to change for me, I feel. I don't have any specific, extrinsic goals. For me, it's when I no longer feel like I'm loving what I'm doing, that's when I'll be ready to move on. But a year's time from now, I want to be doing what I'm doing with bigger weights, hopefully on a world stage. But if not, I still want to be just lifting bigger weights. In 5 years' time, I don't know what's going to happen then, but 2024 Paris is something that's definitely in the back of the mind. As long as my body's healthy and I'm still progressing, then I'll keep lifting. And 10 years' time, I have no idea.
So if you weren't weightlifting or coaching CrossFit, what do you think you'd be doing?
Oh, maybe still buying and designing in fashion.
Yeah, you might still be.
I did
still be at Pumpkin Patch.
Yeah. Well, Pumpkin Patch is no longer,
Oh,
so
yeah,
probably not
there.
But I did love it. I did love it. Yeah.
All right. So I just want to say thanks so much for coming down and sharing a bit about your journey in the sports of Olympic weightlifting and CrossFit. How can we keep up to date with your journey towards the Olympic Games in Tokyo when it does eventually happen?
Yeah.
How
cool.
can we follow along?
So my Instagram is Megan Ann Signal, and that's where I'm most active with what's going on in my journey.
Yeah.
My coach's Instagram is Papatoetoe Weightlifting Club, and that's where you can see what we're up to in terms of training. And yeah, in business, Renegade Performance and Functional Fitty Stomachy both have Instagrams, so we're pretty active as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time out, and I'm sure everyone appreciated learning a little bit more about you as a person and as an athlete. Thanks so much.
Thank you.